So I had a nail in my truck tire. It was leaking fast. I could hear it hissing at the house, and I thought, oh man, pumped it up real quick, and I said I better run into town. I went to the tire store here in town, walked in and told the guy behind the counter, I got a nail in my tire. And he looked at me with a smirk and he said, do you want 3 more to match? Tire store humor, I guess. It's nails. Nails already had me spinning this week a little bit because we're in our last sermon about contrast. And today it's real simple. It's not hard to see, but catching the bigger meaning sometimes gets past us. Today the contrast is 2 thieves on a cross. One marks the cross of rejection, and one marks the cross of reception. And these 2 are stood up in front of us, and it begs the question, which cross do you choose today? And so today is the last sermon in this contrast. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. It has meant so much to me. God has used these contrasts to challenge me and to reshape me, and I was just proud to be able to do it with you. Next Sunday is Easter, and we begin a new series titled Awakened. And if you got the mailer this week, if you didn't get it this weekend, you'll get it tomorrow. But it's the Easter announcement that says Awaken on it, great big. And what I need you to know is that there's 4 parts to this sermon series, and we're excited to do this. My tail's just wagging, by the way, for this, because if you allow the resurrection truth to come in you, if you accept the idea that Jesus resurrected from the dead, that he was clearly dead and he came back to life all on his own, if you accept that, it will awaken 4 different areas in our lives. And these areas are all important. They're imperative to our spiritual journey. They are imperative to our emotional well-being. We're going to talk about all 4 of those areas for 4 weeks, all right? Now, before we get to Easter, my heart always wants to run to Easter, especially in dark times that we live in. I don't want to spend too much time on Friday, but we're not the ones telling the story here. God's the one telling the story, and it's not good for us to cut his story because the story of Jesus spends more verses and more time on the cross than it does on the resurrection, on Easter. Man, God really slows down the story of Jesus as we go into what's called Good Friday. I'm inviting you to come here on Friday night at 7 o'clock to join with me and others as we just slow down and draw our attention to what the cross meant. There's a Journey of the Cross presentation here at our church. It will be in the other sanctuary. It's a multimedia presentation. There's singing. There will be communion. There's scripture. But it's also the images of the cross. And we walk to the cross on Friday night together. It's important because you know what? You give so much attention to getting ready for Christmas. And Christmas is not the crowning part of Jesus' story. We love Christmas, but that is not it. The crowning part of the story of Jesus is his death, burial, and his resurrection. That's where God puts a lot of the spotlight. So just as much time as you use to prepare for Christmas, I'm asking you to give a little bit of energy and prepare for Easter. If you'll come here on Friday night with us, I promise you it will affect you and it will get your hearts ready for what God wants to do Easter morning. All right? All right, with all of that being said, we have this moment where Jesus is going to die on the cross today, all right? It's this moment of the 3 crosses. They're all important. The Jewish leaders are getting their way today. They wanted Jesus to die, and Jesus is about to die. God is also getting his way today. God wanted Jesus to die, and he's about to die. And some of you are going, wait, what? Yeah, this was part of God's plan from the beginning. This was God's design. When the sin in the Garden of Eden happened and God was separated from mankind, he spent the rest of his time pursuing and looking, and we've been hiding from him ever since. But if he gets your attention and you wake up to the reality of God, you get this connection back to him. What God does with the cross of Jesus is he builds this bridge back to us. so that you and I can come into a relationship with him. Now, just like all the other contrast stories that we've been in, there is so much going on in this moment of the crosses. Let's jump right in. Luke chapter 23. I'm going to start reading with verse 32. 2 other men, both criminals, were also led out with Jesus to be executed. And when they came to the place called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there along with the criminals, one on his right and the other one on his left. Okay, 3 crosses. You see 3 crosses on the highway all the time. The middle cross is usually a little higher than the other 2. That represents the cross Jesus was on. This isn't just by accident. This was designed this way. That Jesus would hang in the middle of rejection and reception. He is the cross of redemption between reception and rejection. These 2 crosses. And these 2 crosses are opportunities. The crowd is mocking Jesus at this time. The religious leaders are mocking. Oh, he called himself the Messiah, and look what we were able to do with him. We could hang him on a cross. It's the same thing the Muslim religion does to this day. If you can hang God on a cross, he's not God. That's their argument. And Muslims stand in mockery of that moment. And that's what's going on here. The soldiers are mocking. In shock of all shocks, the criminals are also mocking. Look at verse 39. One of the criminals who hung there hurled insults at Jesus. Aren't you the Messiah? Save yourself and save us. Verse 40. But the other criminal rebuked him. Don't you fear God, he said, since you are under the same sentence? We are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve, but this man has done nothing wrong. All 4 Gospels tell us about the crosses, about these thieves, these criminals. It's proof, by the way. Again, God's always giving you proof that Jesus is his chosen one. We were told 600 years before this, 600 years, that when you're looking for the Messiah, look for one who hangs with the transgressors, who's sentenced with transgressors. This is in Isaiah chapter 53. He poured out his life unto death and was numbered with the transgressors. And for years, those who were studying that, for 600 years, they couldn't explain what that meant. But then when Jesus hangs on a cross, we understand, he's hanging up there with these 2 criminals. Now, if you start piecing together the evidence from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, those 3 Gospels, you discover that both criminals at the beginning were hurling insults. I know here in Luke you just have the 2 and it looks like one's defending. But before this man defended Jesus, before he did that, he was part of insults. Why? Well, the crowd was insulting Jesus. Maybe if we join with the crowd, they'll accept us, which is a philosophy of our day. The world throws insults at and people jump on board so quick. And they have not looked at the proofs, and they have not looked at the evidence, and they have not weighed those decisions out. But they just jump on board. And so these 2 criminals are doing the same. But something happened in this man's life. Something suddenly changed. The words of the crowd became repulsive to his ears. The insults of his friend over here just rubbed him, just became so abrasive. And then maybe it was a sudden awareness of God. Maybe it was a sudden awareness that his life was ebbing away and he was going to die. Maybe it was a sudden, no one's going to rescue me in this crowd, so I'll turn to the only one who can rescue me. For whatever happened in this criminal's heart, the insults changed to defending Jesus. Have you lost your mind? He says to his friend. We deserve to be up here, but this man has done nothing wrong. And his buddy must have gone, what happened to you? Some of your friends look at your life and go, what has happened to you? Then there's this personal conversation, verse 42. Then the criminal said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus answered him, truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. Boy, this is a really sad reality One chooses life, one chooses death. One chooses to take ownership in the kingdom, one chooses to reject it. This is our entire world around us right now. Suddenly, there is all of this remorse, and he gets on board. Now, there's a few things I find absolutely remarkable in the story. This could only be a Jesus story, by the way. I find it remarkable that this man, after watching the character of Jesus in the crucifixion, after watching that he doesn't beg for his life one time, and I think they did, after hearing his prayer, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, after seeing Jesus' personal care for his mother from the cross, after watching the world turn dark and there was no explanation for the darkness, this man could hold it in no longer. And he says, remember me. I find that part of the story remarkable. I find it equally remarkable that this man watched the character of Jesus in his death, did not hear him beg for mercy one time from the crowd. He watched Jesus care for his mother. He heard the prayer, Father, forgive them. And he too watched the world turn dark. And yet in his stubbornness, he continued to mock Jesus. I find that remarkable. But the most remarkable is Jesus, who hung on the cross of redemption, and somehow in the excruciating pain of a crucifixion, nails, he maintained his heart for a lost soul. Only Jesus could do that. These two men, they represent contrast today. One chooses life, one chooses death. One chooses to disown Jesus, the other one chooses to take ownership. Which one represents your walk right now? Which one is your spiritual journey? Jesus said in Matthew chapter 10, whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge him before the Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will also disown them in heaven. So you got these three crosses, but it is not the most remarkable thing for me this week. Here's the bigger point. That this one moment for this criminal, a door is open at the very last moment of his life. And I've heard preachers preach against deathbed conversions, that they weren't real. I don't think you get more deathbed conversion than this dude. The door really opened for this criminal to sneak into heaven? That really just happened? Yeah. And all he said was, Jesus, remember me. Wait, that's all it took. Yeah. That can't be. He's made thousands of mistakes. He chose the wrong crowd. He chose the wrong behavior. He chose the wrong moral ethics, the wrong moral code. He has not had a chance to do anything good. He has no good works. This is a man whose entire life was a waste. Was it a waste? Because you and I have this one moment where a door is opened at the last second. And aren't we all glad that a door opened even at the last second? Because that same door is an option for you and I. Even though I've made thousands of mistakes, just a quick connection to Jesus and it's all erased. Even though I've walked 10,000 steps away, he's only one step back. Can it really be that easy? Can you really dodge an eternal bullet? Just that simple? Yes. You can dodge a bullet. Okay, so imagine for a moment you're driving down to Springfield and you're in a hurry and you are going too fast. And before you know it, you come around the corner and there's a state trooper and he has you. You know it. You're like, ah, and you suck in a breath and you pull back. You're like, oh my gosh. And you look in your rearview mirror as you blow by him and it's like, please, please, no, 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 no. And he pulls out and the lights come on and your heart starts beating and you start perspiring, or so I've been told. This is what happens. But anyway, and you're like, oh my gosh, he got me. And I look at, and your wife says, I told you you're driving too fast. Oh, thank you, helper. That's nice. You know, he only speeds when he's been drinking, officer. Oh, thank you. You know, it's like, oh, he's got me. He's got me. And I'm guilty. I'm so guilty. And as I'm watching him come up from, as you're watching him come up from me, he goes right past you. How do you feel in this moment? I am invincible. I just dodged a bullet. Oh my goodness. I was so guilty. I was so caught. He should have put this man on the cross. I wonder how he felt when he heard the words, today, in just a little while, you and I, we're going to walk into paradise together. All it took was just him crying out to Jesus. That's all it took. And some of you even now are sitting out there going, it can't be that easy. I have to do more. No, you don't. You just have to connect your life to Jesus. It's not that hard. A lot of preachers have been doing it lately, and I know it's been I know now it's off of TikTok, and you may have seen it, but this is my own version of it. A man is newbie in heaven, and he's walking around taking in the sights, and he's enjoying every moment of it. And he sees a crowd of men standing off to the side, talking and laughing, enjoying them. So he goes over and joins them, and hey, new guy, welcome. You know, thank you. Moses is in the circle, and he says, oh, young brother, tell us what mighty works you did for the Lord. And the young guy says, none. King David says, well, tell us what great victories you gained for the Lord. And the young man says, none. Jonah says, well, tell us what great sermons you've preached for the Lord. And he said, none. And Daniel's there and said, well, tell us about what great moments of courage you showed for the Lord. He said, I've got none. The Apostle Peter is there, and Peter says, well, what church are you affiliated with? And he says, none. And the Apostle Paul is there. Tell us what your theology of the Trinity is. And the young man goes, I got none. And the Apostle John is there. What is your millennial view of end times? He's like, none. And so they're all looking at each other confused. And finally Moses asked, well, then how did you come to find your way to heaven? And he says, the man on the cross next to me said I could come. Can't be that easy. Yeah, it is just that easy. All you got to do is connect your life to Jesus. Even though you've walked 10,000 steps away, he's only one step back. One good choice can offset 1,000 bad choices today. As we come to the end of this contrast, these contrasts are now in front of you. Which represents your life today? The cross of rejection, maybe, or the cross of reception?